There is one money skill that turns unsupported men dangerous. It is not saving, it is not budgeting, it is not reading finance books. It is the ability to turn value into action, to make strangers trust, buy, follow, hire, invest, or open the door. Because a poor man can have skill, he can have discipline, he can have intelligence, he can have hunger in his chest and pressure on his back. But if he cannot translate his value into someone else's decision, he remains trapped under men who can. Machiavelli would not call this unfair. He would call it reality. The man who cannot sell his value is ruled by the men who can, and this is the wound most unsupported men avoid. The market does not reward what you secretly are. It rewards what you can make visible, credible, and urgent enough to act on. Most men think money follows effort. It does not. Money follows perceived value. And perceived value is not the same thing as real value. This is why talented men stay broke. This is why intelligent men remain overlooked. This is why disciplined men are managed by men who could not survive 1 week inside their work ethic. The difference is not always ability. Sometimes the difference is translation. One man has value but cannot explain it. Another man has less value but makes it clear, specific, believable, and useful to the person holding the opportunity. The second man gets the room. The second man gets the client. The second man gets the call back. The second man gets the money. And the first man tells himself the world is blind. But the market is not blind. The market is impatient. It does not have time to investigate your hidden greatness. It responds to signals, proof, positioning, reputation, narrative, results. Machiavelli understood this before modern business gave it cleaner names. In The Prince, he wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are." That line is not permission to lie, it is a warning. People judge what they can see before they investigate what is true. They act on what feels visible, credible, and useful. If your value cannot be seen, framed, trusted, and acted upon, the world behaves as if it does not exist. This is not about becoming fake. It is about refusing to remain invisible. The unsupported man has no family name protecting him, no powerful uncle quietly placing his resume on the right desk, no inherited trust, no elite network passing him from one closed room to another. So his proof must speak louder, his positioning must be cleaner, his words must carry weight. A man who cannot sell depends on men who can. Understand that sentence. Do not decorate it, do not soften it. If you cannot sell, you depend on someone else to explain you, someone else to recommend you, someone else to open the door, someone else to interpret your potential, someone else to decide whether your work matters. That is not humility, that is strategic weakness. Sales is not begging. Begging says, "Please choose me because I need this." Sales says, "Here is the outcome you want. Here is the proof I can create it. Here is the cost of ignoring it." That is not weakness, that is translation. Sales is the conversion of perception into action. A man with skill creates value. A man with persuasion moves value. A man with proof makes value believable. A man with positioning makes value desirable. This is why Conor McGregor became more than a fighter. Skill wins the fight, but perception sells the arena. He entered combat sports where everyone was skilled, violent, disciplined, and hungry. That environment was full of men who could strike, wrestle, endure pain, and train with obsession. Skill alone did not make him economically different. What made him different was his ability to turn attention into money. He turned personality, spectacle, conflict, timing, and narrative into market attention. People did not only watch him fight, they paid to see the story around the fight. They paid to see the confidence tested. They paid to see the villain rise or fall. They paid because perception turned skill into an event. In 2021, Forbes reported that McGregor became the world's highest-paid athlete, with much of his income coming not from fighting itself, but from selling his majority stake in proper number 12 whiskey. That is the mechanism. Ability won the contest. Perception sold the arena. Attention multiplied the reward. This does not mean copy McGregor's personality. Do not become loud because a loud man made money. That is imitation without intelligence. The lesson is colder. Skill without perception is underpaid. Perception without skill eventually collapses. But skill plus perception becomes leverage. And leverage is where money begins. The poor man who refuses to learn persuasion often hides behind morality. He says, "I do not want to sell myself." He says, "I do not want to sound desperate." He says, "I should not have to convince people if my work is good." That sounds noble. Often it is fear wearing clean clothes. Because the real fear is not sales. The real fear is being judged. The real fear is making your value visible and discovering that it is not yet strong enough. The real fear is leaving the comfort of being misunderstood and entering the battlefield of being measured. It is safer to say, "No one gave me a chance." It is riskier to build proof so strong that the chance becomes rational. It is safer to say, "I have potential." It is riskier to show visible work. It is safer to say, "People do not understand me." It is riskier to learn the language of the market. The market is not a parent. It does not reward your backstory. It does not owe you emotional recognition. It does not pay you because you suffered. It pays when your usefulness becomes visible enough to reduce someone else's pain, risk, cost, confusion, or delay. Not, "I work hard." Say, "I help businesses get more qualified leads." Not, "I am disciplined." Say, "I deliver edited videos every week that retain viewers past the first minute." Not, "I know coding." Say, "I build systems that reduce manual work and save 10 hours per week." Same man, same skill, different translation, different money. This is where unsupported men make their first mistake. They talk from their wound. They say, "I need a chance." They say, "I have been through a lot." They say, "No one helped me." They say, "I just need someone to believe in me." That may be true, but truth alone does not make it strategic. Machiavelli would ask a colder question. What does this make the other person do? Does it create trust? Does it create urgency? Does it create respect? Does it reduce risk? Does it give the other person a reason to act now? If not, it is confession, not persuasion. And confession without leverage often lowers status. If you are the kind of man who knows he has value but keeps calling silence patience, stop making false progress. You already know effort matters, but your real problem is that your effort is not yet translated into proof, positioning, and action. If you keep hiding behind discipline without learning how to move decisions, you will watch less capable men take the rooms you train for. Inside Patreon, you get deeper, unfiltered lessons on power, persuasion, positioning, and market survival, so you can stop waiting to be discovered and start becoming impossible to ignore. This is not for men looking for comfort. It is for men ready to become strategically dangerous. The decision is yours. Now understand the next layer. Visibility alone is not enough. Because once people see you, they still must believe you. And belief is not created by need. Belief is created by proof. A supported man can borrow trust. An unsupported man must manufacture it. One man gets opportunities before he proves himself, because his name, school, family, company, or network already carries trust into the room. Another man enters with no inherited credibility. No one is waiting to bless him. No one is preparing a soft landing. He has to make strangers feel that trusting him is rational. This is why vague ambition is useless. I am hungry is not proof. I am loyal is not proof. I am disciplined is not proof. I just need one chance is not proof. Proof reduces perceived risk. That is its function. A case study says, "This is what I did." Visible work says, "This is how I think." Measurable results say, "This is what changed because I touched it." No begging, no emotional debt, no demand for sympathy, just evidence. Look at the founder rejected by investors. He can explain his dream for months. He can speak with passion. He can say the idea matters. But capital rarely moves because a man is sincere. Capital moves when risk becomes believable. Traction, revenue, users, retention, demand. A sharp founder learns that rejection is not always hatred. Sometimes rejection is the market saying, "Your proof is not strong enough yet." Nobody invests in your pain. They invest in your proof. The boy in a man wants someone to say, "I see your potential." The man in him builds proof so potential becomes irrelevant. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and to imitate those who have been supreme." He was not telling men to worship heroes. He was telling them to study what works. And in every age, proof works. Proof survives doubt. Proof embarrasses criticism. Proof turns strangers into witnesses. The old belief is, "I need a chance." The stronger belief is, "I create evidence so strong that the chance becomes rational." But proof alone still does not move money. Proof can sit quietly in the dark. Proof can be real and still be ignored. Proof can exist and still be misunderstood. So the next law is harsher. You must position proof so the market understands why it matters. Positioning is the difference between having proof and making proof valuable. Two men can have the same result. One says, "I helped with marketing." The other says, "I helped a local business turn cold attention into booked calls by changing the offer, the landing page, and the follow-up sequence." The first man sounds replaceable. The second man sounds useful. Two men can edit videos. One says, "I make videos look better." The other says, "I edit videos to hold attention past the first minute, increase watch time, and make the viewer feel pressure to stay." The first man sells a task. The second man sells an outcome. Two men can design websites. One says, "I design clean websites." The other says, "I build landing pages that make strangers understand the offer fast enough to book a call." The first man is selling decoration. The second man is selling movement. This is why less skilled men pass more skilled men. Not always because they are better, because they understand the decision-maker's mind better. They know what the buyer fears. They know what the employer wants to avoid. They know what the client needs to justify the decision. They know how to reduce uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the strongest forces in money. People do not only buy what is impressive, they buy what feels safe enough to choose. They hire what feels clear enough to trust. They invest in what feels believable enough to defend. They follow what feels sharp enough to remember. If you cannot translate your value into that language, you force the other person to do the work. And most people will not do that work for you. They will not sit there and decode your potential. They will not investigate your hidden discipline. They will not search through your pain to find your usefulness. They will not build your argument in their own mind while you stand there hoping to be understood. That is your job. This is the cold correction most unsupported men need. You are not entitled to be understood before you become clear. You may have suffered. You may have been doubted. You may have had to build without support. That matters to you. It may explain your hunger. It may explain your discipline. It may explain why you refuse to quit. But to the market, your suffering only becomes valuable when it has been converted into ability, proof, judgment, speed, resilience, and results. Until then, it is private pain. And private pain does not move public decisions. Machiavelli wrote, in a world where appearance, reputation, timing, fear, alliance, and advantage decided survival. Florence was not a classroom. It was a battlefield of families, rulers, foreign powers, money, betrayal, and reputation. He did not study what men claimed to value. He studied what they actually responded to when power was at stake. That is why his realism belongs in the marketplace. He was not asking, what should men be? He was asking, what are men when advantage is on the table? And when advantage is on the table, people do not move because you are sincere. They move because they see gain or loss. They move because risk is reduced. They move because trust is created. They move because the cost of ignoring you becomes higher than the cost of choosing you. In Discourses on Libby, Machiavelli wrote, in considering what courses it is easy and what it is difficult to persuade a people to follow, this distinction may be drawn, either what you would persuade them to presents, on the face of it, a semblance of gain or loss. That is, sales stripped of decoration. People move when they see gain or loss. Not when they admire your effort, not when they respect your suffering, not when they hear every detail of your struggle. Gain or loss, pain or relief, risk or security, status lost or status gained. The market is not asking, who are you inside? It is asking, what changes if I trust you? That question should live inside your head every time you present yourself. What changes if they trust me? What pain do I remove? What outcome do I create? What risk do I reduce? What cost do I prevent? What speed do I add? What clarity do I bring? What proof makes this believable? If you cannot answer those questions, you do not have a sales problem. You have a translation problem. And a translation problem keeps valuable men poor. This is why desperation destroys positioning. Desperation makes your need louder than your value. When your need becomes the center of the conversation, the other person feels pressure instead of confidence. The buyer feels your instability. The employer feels your anxiety. The client feels your hunger. And hunger without structure does not create trust. It creates caution. Do not say, I really need this opportunity. Say, here is the result I can create. Do not say, I have been working so hard. Say, here is the problem I remove. Do not say, no one has given me a chance. Say, here is what I have already built without one. This is not arrogance. It is structure. The unsupported man often over-explains because he has spent years being doubted. Family doubts him. Friends laugh. Society ignores him. So when he finally reaches a gatekeeper, he unloads the entire emotional history. He tries to be understood. He tries to make the other person feel the depth of what he has survived. But explanation is often disguised permission-seeking. A powerful man does not bring his wound into every negotiation. He brings proof. He brings clarity. He brings terms. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, when, of the two, either must be dispensed with." In the market, do not distort this into intimidation. Do not become childish. Do not confuse fear with loudness. The modern application is cleaner. Do not depend on being liked. Become costly to ignore. A man who needs to be liked will underprice himself. He will apologize for his terms. He will avoid follow-up. He will avoid clarity. He will soften his offer until it loses force. He will call his weakness humility because the truth is too painful. But the market does not reward men who are afraid to state value clearly. The marketplace is a battlefield of perception, proof, attention, trust, and timing. Your war is not against people. Your war is against invisibility. Your war is against weak signals. Your war is against the part of you that wants pity more than leverage. That part of you must die. Because if you let it live, it will keep asking the world to understand you before you have made yourself undeniable. The old belief says, if they understood my struggle, they would support me. The stronger belief says, if I communicate outcomes clearly, the right people will act. Now the question becomes tactical. What proof should a man build first when nobody is coming to vouch for him? There are 3 proof assets: case studies, visible work, measurable results. These are not motivational ideas, they are weapons against invisibility. A case study replaces your sad story. Visible work replaces your missing network. Measurable results replace the permission you never got. A case study is a story of transformation. Before, action. After, it shows pressure, decision, execution, and result. Do not say, I know marketing. Say, a local gym had inconsistent leads. I rewrote the offer, changed the landing page, and helped them book 23 calls in 30 days. That sentence carries weight because it shows a condition, an action, and a measurable change. It turns your skill into evidence. It gives the buyer something to trust. It makes your claim harder to dismiss. Visible work is proof that can be inspected before anyone gives you permission. Write breakdowns, build mock projects, record analysis, post before and after examples. Create samples. Publish your thinking. Show how you solve problems. Most unsupported men wait for someone to give them a project so they can prove themselves. That is the old mindset. The stronger man creates proof before permission. If no one hires you to design a page, redesign one publicly and explain why. If no one hires you to edit a video, break down what kills retention in a public video and show the fix. If no one hires you to write copy, rewrite weak offers and explain the psychology. If no one hires you to build systems, create a simple tool and document the time it saves. Visible work is how a man with no endorsement forces the market to see his mind. Then come measurable results. Numbers are cold. Numbers reduce argument. Revenue increased. Time saved. Retention improved. Leads booked. Costs reduced. Errors removed. Speed improved. A man with numbers negotiates differently because he is no longer selling his personality. He is selling evidence. Most unsupported men avoid proof because proof exposes them. It is safer to say, I am talented. It is riskier to publish the work. It is safer to say, I could do it if someone gave me a chance. It is riskier to create a sample without permission. It is safer to blame the network. It is riskier to build a portfolio so clear that the network becomes less important. This is why proof separates men. Not because proof is complicated, because proof removes excuses. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "Fortune is the arbiter of one half of our actions, but she still leaves us to direct the other half." This is the end of victim language. Yes, fortune matters, birth matters, networks matter, timing matters, family background matters. The world is not equal. The game is not fair. Some men begin with trust already attached to their name. Some men begin with doors already half open, but Machiavelli refuses fatalism. He gives fortune half, not all. The other half belongs to preparation, discipline, adaptation, and action. For the unsupported man, proof is how you control your half. You cannot control who failed to support you. You can control what evidence exists when your name is searched. You can control whether your work has examples. You can control whether your results are documented. You can control whether your words make value clear. You can control whether your discipline becomes visible. The old belief says, I have no network. The stronger belief says, my proof must become the network. But proof still needs one final force: narrative. Because the same proof can be ignored or desired depending on how it is framed. Reality that is not framed will be framed by someone else. If you do not frame your value, the buyer frames it as cost. If you do not frame your work as outcome, the employer frames it as task. If you do not frame your skill as leverage, the market frames it as labor. Then you wonder why you are underpaid. But you helped create the prison by letting others define the category. Control of narrative begins with 3 questions. What pain do I remove? What outcome do I create? What proof makes this believable? Answer those clearly and your value sharpens. Ignore them and your work becomes vague. Consider Airbnb in its early days. The company struggled for money and attention. The founders famously sold themed cereal boxes during the 2008 election season to keep the company alive and fund the business. Look at the mechanism. No institutional confidence, no easy money, no obvious trust. Most people would have called the situation embarrassing. They would have waited to be taken seriously. They would have complained that investors did not understand the vision. But they converted attention into cash through an unusual campaign. They created demand, created a story, and proved resourcefulness under pressure. The deeper lesson is not cereal. The deeper lesson is survival through narrative. They were not only renting air mattresses, they were proving they could attract attention, create a story, survive pressure, and turn public curiosity into money. When no one backs you, your ability to improvise becomes your first investor. The world does not reward dignity in the beginning. It rewards resourcefulness. Machiavelli wrote, "The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar." Do not reduce this to contempt. It is observation. Most people do not have the time, access, or discipline to investigate your full substance. They respond to what is legible. A strong narrative makes your value legible. A weak narrative forces your value to fight in darkness. This is why potential is poverty unless it becomes proof. Proof is weak unless it becomes persuasion. Persuasion is incomplete unless it becomes action. A client does not buy copywriting. He buys more qualified leads. An employer does not buy hard work. He buys reduced risk, faster execution, and fewer problems. An audience does not buy content. It buys clarity, identity, emotional pressure, and a new way to see the world. A business does not buy design. It buys trust at first glance. A market does not buy your inner greatness. It buys what it can recognize. And this is where Machiavelli's appearance versus reality theme becomes dangerous. He did not say reality was useless. He said reality without perception is weak in the public arena. In The Prince, he argued that a ruler should appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, and upright, while also being prepared to act according to necessity. In business, this does not justify fraud. It does not justify deception. It does not justify selling what you cannot deliver. A man who sells without substance eventually becomes hated. And Machiavelli warned rulers to avoid hatred and contempt. So the real lesson is not, pretend to be valuable. The real lesson is, make your real value visible before others define you as worthless. The market rewards translation because translation reduces friction. Confusion kills action. Vagueness kills trust. Desperation kills status. Proof creates belief. Positioning creates desire. Clarity creates movement. That is the money skill. Not sales as begging. Sales as command of perception. Sales as value translated into decision. Sales as proof made visible. Sales as the bridge between what you can do and what others are willing to act on. If you are the man who is tired of being invisible, stop mistaking private growth for market power. You already know you are capable, but your real problem is that your capability is not yet organized into proof, narrative, and persuasion. If you keep waiting for the world to notice your potential, you will keep losing to men who make their value easier to choose. Inside Patreon, you get the deeper, unfiltered breakdowns on power, persuasion, proof assets, market positioning, and Machiavellian self-command, so you can turn discipline into leverage instead of quiet frustration. This is not for spectators. It is for unsupported men who are ready to build power without asking permission. The decision is yours. Now the final question is not how much money this skill can make you. The deeper question is what this skill makes you. Because the man who can sell his value is no longer trapped waiting outside the gate. He begins to understand how gates open. He stops treating rejection as a verdict on his soul and starts reading it as information. Maybe the proof is weak. Maybe the offer is unclear. Maybe the positioning is vague. Maybe the buyer does not see the gain. Maybe the risk still feels too high. That is not humiliation. That is feedback. Weak men turn feedback into resentment. Strategic men turn feedback into refinement. Machiavelli's world is not soft. It does not promise that goodness creates security. It does not pretend appearances do not matter. It does not worship intentions. It studies outcomes. That is why his philosophy applies to money. Not because money is the highest goal. Money is not the goal. Money is a byproduct of power, and power begins when your value can move reality. A man with value but no persuasion depends on others. A man with persuasion but no value becomes exposed. A man with value, proof, positioning, and communication becomes dangerous in the market. Not violent, not reckless, not predatory. Dangerous because he cannot be easily ignored. This is the complete frame. Skill is internal. Proof is external. Positioning is strategic. Persuasion is movement. Leverage is accumulated power. Money is the market's response to useful power. Freedom is what happens when dependence decreases. Machiavelli would tell you to stop confusing virtue with weakness. Virtue, in his world, is not moral purity. It is force, capacity, adaptability, courage, discipline, and the ability to act when fortune changes. Fortune will not always support you. People will not always believe you. Family may not understand you. Friends may doubt you. Society may ignore you, but none of that gives you permission to collapse into resentment. Control your half. Build skill. Make proof. Frame value. Understand human decision. Translate outcomes. Sell without begging. Move without waiting. The unsupported man does not need applause. He needs leverage. And leverage begins the moment he stops asking the world to understand his potential and starts forcing the market to recognize his proof. The market does not reward the man who suffered. It rewards the man who turned suffering into proof.